My name was Dorothy Patrick originally, and then Dorothy Pennell, and now it's Dorothy McComas. And I was born February the 25th of 1929 in Blanco, New Mexico. That's a little bitty town right outside of Bloomington and Aztec. But they moved back to Arkansas, and I started school here at Cane Hill. And they moved back to Texas, so I went to Texas school for a while. And it was a great big school and so many kids and such a huge place. It was quite different. And then after a few years, they moved back. I think when I was in the 5th grade, they moved back to Arkansas. And I came to Cane Hill School. Much different, but of course at first I didn't like it, but I learned to love it. It was a good school, well run. We had Kate Finley for our superintendent, and she was a dandy. She did a good job. We had upstairs in the big auditorium room, we had a lot of classes. Would take turns in there, and Miss Finley would keep study hall for the ones that wasn't in class. And we had coal burning stoves, great old big thing in the corner, and it'd warm it up. And we'd go down to the spring to get water, to get a drink. And the way I remember it, two girls or two boys would get to go down and get a bucket of water and bring it up there, and I think we all used the same dipper, is the way I remember it. But they gave us a good education. We studied hard, and we had to do our work, and we did. And it was a good school, good atmosphere, and lots of fun. I can remember lots of fun that we had. And I was the first girl or child in the whole school to get glasses. And that took a little teasing to get used to that. But the teacher said, "Now, Dorothy, whatever you do, don't you let them make you cry." I think I was in the 7th or 8th grade by then. And I also was the first one in Cane Hill School to have a job. And the boys were all pretty envious because they couldn't find one. But I sat with the switchboard when I was in probably the 8th grade, just a little kid. And I sat there and helped Alta Robinson so she could get her dinner and do her work. And I'd stay all week and all weekend and go home every other weekend. And I'd get pretty homesick, but I was famous for that, for having a job. And it didn't pay much, but back then times were pretty hard, and a little bit of money went a long ways. Are you kidding? Of course we listened. We knew all the gossip. Yes, we listened. To me it wasn't as interesting probably as being a kid, but I'd listen, and it'd ring, and you'd pull one of these brass things. It was about 3 inches long, and you'd plug it. You'd say, "Hello, this is Cane Hill operator. Who did you want?" And they'd tell you what line they wanted, and you'd pull up another one and plug them together so they could talk to each other. And somehow, I don't remember, a light went off or something when they were finished their conversation. I didn't listen all the time. They'd get another call, and you'd have to answer it. And long distance was pretty complicated. You'd have to know whether to go through the Tulsa or which way to go to get them to the right one. And I'd sit there, and I enjoyed it. And then when she got her work done, I had a room upstairs at Alta and Joe Robinson's house, and I'd go up and do my homework. You know, to me, it wasn't that interesting. Gossip wasn't. Kids didn't talk much. You used the telephone when it was something you had to tell somebody. It wasn't just you'd talk to your friends for 30 minutes every evening. Kids didn't abuse the privilege of using the phone. If some of my schoolmates called, I probably listened every time. But mostly I remember getting a call to go to somebody sick and calling the doctor, and real serious things. It wasn't just fun. The telephone wasn't then. They'd call and say somebody's having a baby, and that'd be interesting to tell that. It was in her living room, the switchboard was. And before that, it was in that red brick building that's they're reconstructing now. We call it, it was a Pyatt lived there at one time. I don't know what they call that house, but it was just very small. It was, but now they have had people digging around, and they found that that house used to be 30 foot longer than it is now. Did you know that? So it used to be like when they used it in the Civil War for their headquarters. It was bigger. It wasn't just that little. It just looked like one room now. But the switchboard had been there for a lot of years before Alta Robinson took it. For basketball, we had a dirt court. It was very smooth and level, and before a game, they'd put fresh chalk. I remember those ball games were pretty special. We'd get out of class and go sit up under those walnut trees and watch them play. I got to play. I was a basketball player, not a very good one because I was kind of small, a little bit short. But it was fun. We'd meet kids from other schools that way, and then occasionally, for the tournament, the way I remember it, we went to Greenland. They had a gym, a big gym, and to us it was huge after playing on a dirt court. But it was a good time to go to school. Everybody was poor. We were all in the same boat, most of us. But we didn't know it. We thought we were well off and happy. We were glad to go to school. It was a fun thing to me to go to school. We had games we'd play outside, like softball. I love softball. And I excelled in that because I could run really fast. I was a real fast runner. And when we went back for school reunion, the first time we had one, the boy said, "Well, I remember her. She's the one that beat us running." We'd play ball, we'd play hopscotch, we'd play jump the rope was a favorite thing for us boys too. And there was a ridge of rocks around the building that just stuck out about 4 inches. And we would walk that, and it was like 3 or 4 foot off the ground, and it was a no-no. You weren't supposed to do that. And the teacher would catch us because those rough bricks would pull little snags on our sweater. And the teacher and mother would know we'd been walking the wall. And that was fun to do. And the kids would fall off of it, but we never did have one hurt real bad, a few scrapes. My dad was Patrick, and mother was Cornelia Elizabeth. And Dad was born in Texas, and Mom was born here in Cane Hill. So I was the oldest of 5. I was the big girl. My parents they were some of the first ones to start raising chickens. So we did better after that. We had a lot of chicken to eat, and that was good. We milked cows and had a big garden. Had a good life. Being the oldest one, I got to go help milk the cows. And I could do that. I helped Dad milk. Sometimes we milked quite a few, 3 or 4. No more than that. Yeah, and just with your hands. And a lot of the years we just had enough, 1 cow for the family use. We'd gather the eggs and work in the garden, and whatever needed to be done, the kids pitch in and help. Learn to cook and can and clean house, sew, and things that people did back then. But I remember living here during the Depression years when one year was so hot that you couldn't hardly walk barefooted. The ground was too hot. It was awful dry. I was about 4 probably, or no, about 5 when we lived. It was when we moved back here. My favorite friend was Valera Taylor. and we didn't see each other except at school because she lived over on Fly Creek. We'd have softball games. The whole community had come. And there by Clyde was a big old field, great big old field, and the whole country had come, and we'd choose have two people as leaders, and they'd choose, and of course they'd start out with the big people and get down to us kids, and we'd all get a turn to play. It was a good community thing to have those softball games on Sunday afternoons.
What were some of your other routines on a Sunday?
Go to church at Clyde. The little church there at Clyde was where I went to Sunday school. Annie Yates used to get up, like in the wintertime, she'd get up early and build a fire in her house, and then get up and go across the street and build one in the church, so it'd be warm when everybody came. Shaker Yates's mercantile store, and the post office was in one corner of it. When you first went in, there was the post office, and that was and they had horseshoe games going out at the side of it about all summer, and I could pitch horseshoes too. I was a pretty good pitcher then, and I'd get to pitch horseshoes with the guys. One day, Mother was out of thread and Dad was gone. We only had one vehicle, of course. He'd gone to work, and Mom needed some thread, and we lived about 1.5 miles on past Clyde, out in the country a little ways. And she let me ride on a big old plow horse and go get her some thread at the mercantile. And of course, somebody had to help me get back on the horse. Somebody helped me. And I didn't have a saddle. She just put a blanket on it and a halter. And I didn't have any trouble. I rode it all the time around the place there. So that was one errand that I enjoyed doing, was to go to the store. It was a visiting time too. You'd talk to everybody you knew there. And I got to play a game or two of horseshoes before I started home. Sometimes I'd walk to get errands, but one time, for some reason, Mom let me ride the horse. Dominoes and checkers was a big thing. In the evenings, they'd enjoy that and play with us kids, or neighbors would come, or somebody'd come, they'd have a domino game. Pitch horseshoes in the summer when it was pretty, everybody had their horseshoe pitching place already fixed, and your horseshoes ready to go. We had kerosene lamps that we'd light in the evening. We'd have one going in the kitchen, and or two in the living room maybe, and you'd carry one upstairs to your bedroom, or to your bedroom. You got to take a lantern or lamp with you while you were getting ready for bed, or doing your bath in the kitchen in a tub. That's what we used. Cooked with, we were really going good when we got a kerosene stove to use instead of the wood cook stove. And that stuff smells bad, kerosene stove. But we used that for a while and thought it was a real improvement. And then we finally got electricity. That was a wonderful day when they strung those wires up, and you saw it coming across the holler, and you knew it was coming to you. I can remember the first electricity. And Dad always had a radio, battery operated, powered. Just an old wooden cased radio, and with the battery. Big old car battery is what he used on it. So we'd have music and Grand Ole Opry, we'd listen to that, and good programs on whatever they had on radio, which wasn't much. Our very first school bus wasn't yellow. It wasn't even painted. It was built onto the back of a pickup, a big pickup. It'd hold probably 30 kids, and we'd get to use it when we went to ball games or something. And it run a little route too, out in the country. I can't remember who the bus driver was, so I won't try to guess. I'd probably get it wrong. But had seats built around it, on the sides and across the front. And it'd be packed full of kids. Some would sit on the floor. We'd do anything to get to go to that ball game. And anybody that had cars, like the postmaster and the storekeepers, they'd have a car and they'd take a load of kids to the tournament. But that was our first bus, and it was not yellow.